Welcome, Magnus here, and in this video we're going to talk about the top 9 camera settings for recording a concert on your smartphone. Now, if you're new to this channel, definitely consider subscribing. I talk about cameras, both mirrorless and DSLRs, in terms for video. Now today we're talking about using a phone and the top settings in a phone. I did this video a couple of years ago and it applied back then, and I thought it was relevant, and I had Rita Ora and XCX on that last video. But today's video features BlackPink, and a recent concert that I went to there is at MetLife Stadium, and it was amazing. And I thought I'd update that list to 2023 because as phones change, cameras change, and settings change. But let's see how much they change. So we'll go over this top 9 list based off of what I did last time, and I'll kind of update it for 2023 to see if the same rules apply. So without further ado, let's get to BlackPink and let's get to the video.
Are you ready for this?
Now, I have a bonus one, so this is maybe not 9, but number 10. Let's talk about camera versus phone. Now, in stadiums and in certain arenas, you're allowed to bring an actual real camera. Now, the rules on MetLife Stadium are that you can have a camera, but the lens on it can't be longer than 6 inches. So that kind of limits my ability to bring a camera to the arena that could actually zoom in a lot. But I chose the Samsung NX1 to bring with me, and I did bring with me to the concert. So I brought the Samsung NX1 with an 18 to 200 millimeter lens. Now, because this is an APS-C sensor, so it's kind of cropped, it's like around the equivalent of like 275 millimeters if it was like a full frame camera. Basically what that means is that you can zoom in a lot more. So it could zoom in pretty well. But the problem with bringing a limited sized lens is that when you zoom in, the features that you might have on this may not be as good as what you'd get on a smartphone. But how is that possible? This is expensive. Well, it comes down to the weight and the stabilization. Now, this lens actually does have optical image stabilization, so it tries to stabilize, and the camera itself can do digital stabilization. But when turned on, it doesn't exactly work good, and this is kind of the footage you end up with. And although the quality of the camera when standing still is far superior than my smartphone was able to do, and this footage was in 4K, oversampled from 6K sensor, it failed miserably. So when it comes to taking your smartphone versus your mirrorless or DSLR camera, I suggest leave these at home, because even if you do have a cool enough lens or a really modern camera body, you might not be able to get in. And that's something you don't want to deal with. Alright, so number 9 of my previous video, I said get close. And the same applies. The closer you can get to the artist, the better. And yes, that could be expensive in today's market. Now, I was able to get floor seats, but I had to pay a pretty penny, and I used SeatGeek. And SeatGeek actually was able to get me pretty close to some other friends that were going to the concert. So yes, get as close as you can, but once you have your seat, no matter where you are, even if you're in really high up sections, you still should be able to get good video if you follow these rules that I'm going to get to. So number 9 still applies. Get close. Number 8, battery and SD card. It sort of applies. Now, fully charge your cell phone battery. If you have a battery pack with you that you can actually connect to the phone during the concert, great. Try not to charge it unless it's really low, and then charge it because you don't want to miss anything, or at least sporadically charge it when you're not using it. But yes, keep your phone charged. Now, I also mentioned SD card previously, or micro SD card. It's understandable that nowadays a lot of manufacturers are not allowing you to insert a micro SD card to increase your memory. So that being unfortunate, and those higher memory phones can be a little bit more expensive. Clear out photos and video on your phone if you don't have that much space. Just get the space you need and be prepared, because you might want to record a lot of the concert. Number 7, I mentioned getting proper exposure. Now there's a couple of things that actually apply to this. Getting proper exposure can be difficult, especially if you're not fully aware of how to use manual settings on your phone, or your phone may not even have manual settings. But have you ever noticed that when you're using your phone and you want to get someone's face, but the background lights are too bright, they end up being very dark? And then you tap on their face, you increase the exposure, but then after a few seconds, it just kind of goes back down to even out everything. If you can find settings that are pretty much manual settings on your phone, use that. And I'm going to tell you right now exactly how to get the right settings on your phone so that you can get the artist clear and everything else is whatever. What you want to do is go into manual controls. Depending on what the lighting situation is, make sure that your frame rate, like if you're recording 24 or 30, make sure you know what that is, 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second. And then there's something that's called shutter speed. Some will just show a number, like one number, or some will show 1 over something else. Whatever that denominator is, or that single number, make it simple to remember, double what your frame rate is. So if something says you're recording UHD 30, then make that shutter speed 1/60th or 60, right? If you're recording at 60 frames per second, then your shutter speed should be 120 or 1 over 120. Basically, it's double. So remember that. If you need to, come back to this video. Then, once you have those two, there is something else called ISO. ISO is your digital gain, digital brightness or darkness. Adjust that until you get the artists as clear as possible. Now, if it's still too bright and you have it as low as possible, because the higher you go in that number, the higher it gets. The lower you go in the number, the darker it gets. But if you're all the way down and you're still too bright, that's when you have to go back to your shutter speed and then increase that number. So remember I said it's supposed to be double? Increase it to something that's higher until you get the exposure on their faces that you want. Now, if it's a bright day, you're probably going to have to do that as well. If it's nighttime, you might be able to get away with just adjusting the ISO to get what you want. And that's how you get the proper exposure. Now, here's a pro tip. If the lighting changes, and this happens a lot, lighting changes like crazy during concerts, keep the ISO menu open so that you can adjust up and down as the lighting changes, not too frequently, but enough so that you always know that they look good on video rather than too bright or too dark. And then, of course, if you have a white balance setting, now I'm getting very technical, but white balance is basically the colors of the video, how it looks, if it's too blue or it's too red. When you adjust that, I'm not going to tell you what the numbers mean, just look at your video and then go left and right until the colors that you're seeing look like the colors on the phone and they match. And get that. Yes, this was a long one, but I needed to add those so that you can know what to do to get the perfect look. And those rules that I just told you actually apply to anything, not just concerts. Now you're a pro. Here we go, on to the next one. So I spoke high resolution video, and nothing is more relevant than today. High resolution video is very important. If you have 4K, get 4K. If you have 8K, get 8K. Now, sometimes when you record in ultra high resolution settings and your camera has different lenses, maybe some of the zoom lenses might not be able to do 8K. If you have to choose between zooming in a lot or getting higher resolution, I suggest zooming in more to really get that footage that you want to get. But when you're going off wider, then do 8K because you'll still get good looking footage either way. But high resolution is important because if you want to crop in post, you can and still get great looking footage. Or if you don't want to crop, you can leave it the way it is, but it's still going to look fantastic. So make sure you want to give it the highest resolution that your phone can handle so that you get the best looking footage. Moving on. Okay, now I spoke about this in the previous one, but telephoto Yes, still applies. If your phone has several different lenses, use the most telephoto that you can possibly use so you can get up close and personal when you want to. Now, there are certain occasions where you might want a wider shot to look at the whole stage and everything that you've got. But to be quite honest, I prefer to get in as close as possible. And most people in a stadium are going to be pretty far back. So use that telephoto camera when you can, because then you can actually see the footage and everything looks nice and you're getting up close, more close than you thought you would. And what's interesting is that the telephoto camera on my phone actually reached just as far, if not a bit farther, than my zoom lens I brought with me that day to watch the concert. Moving on, go telephoto. Vertical versus horizontal. Now, I really complained on my last video that it was like, please shoot horizontal, not vertical. And I said, well, you know, you can like crop and post and get a vertical video and still get everything, but you'll have two different angles. My opinion on that has changed given how social media has grown, especially stories, reels, and TikTok videos. All of that has made it prevalent so that when you're uploading content and you want to put it out as fast as possible, having the vertical video to actually show up on the entire phone makes sense. I did mention that before, but right now it seems to be very trendy to always have that vertical video up, and it's got its purpose. So if you know what you're recording for, consider that in mind when making a video. Now what you see here, I have a lot of wide angle footage because I knew I was going to upload it to YouTube. So I knew my purpose before I recorded. However, I do have some vertical shots that I use to post on my Instagram as well because I had intentions, I was intentional about the format, and I recorded that way. So I'm not against vertical video as much as I was, even though I'm not too much of a fan of it, but to each his own. And if you know your audience and you know how you want to present it, then record that way. Moving on. Image stabilization. Now this is very important. A lot of phones, almost all smartphones, have the ability to keep your image stabilized, especially if you're using a telephoto lens on your phone. Telephoto lens, and when you're recording anything in telephoto, makes it so that when you shake with your hands, it's going to be even more sensitive to the footage, as you saw in my camera video on how much that was shaking like crazy. So image stabilization is incredible to be able to straighten out your footage. Now, you'll see even in my footage that because of my shakes that were happening, you have a lot of like artifacts. It doesn't look as sharp as it should, because I was shaking while I was holding the phone, and the software does the best possible job that it can do to stabilize the footage. But if you don't want those imperfections, get one of those phone gimbals. Those phone gimbals help clean up and make your footage look very sharp off of your phone, because now you're able to steady it and it doesn't have to work as hard to do digital stabilization on your phone. So those gimbals do serve a purpose even if the phone already has image stabilization. So gimbals would help, and I did see a few at the concert. So they probably got some awesome footage. I don't have a phone gimbal that I took with me. Actually, I do have a phone gimbal, but I was thinking my camera would be enough, and obviously it wasn't. So, and I'm not going to show up at the concert with a huge gimbal for the camera. Then it's just kind of bruh, what you trying to pull? Get out of here. So to each his own. Moving on. Now this is relevant 30 years ago as it is today. Pay attention to what you're recording. A lot of people, even at the concert, just kind of held their phone up, didn't look, and were recording nothing. And that, in my opinion, doesn't really make sense if you want to experience the concert. So when it comes to actually recording, please look at your phone. And yeah, a lot of people want to be in the present moment, so they want to see it with their own eyes, but look at it off their phone. But if that's the point, then turn off your phone and just watch it, because you're not going to end up watching footage that is of the floor or of the ceiling or of the sky when you weren't even really paying attention. So then you end up deleting that footage anyway, and now your arm's tired. So don't do that to yourself. If you're going to record.
Let's continue the show. Let's do it.
And number 1, I said this before, I say it again, put the damn phone down and enjoy yourself in the concert. That is an experience that you're not only going to record with your phone, but you're going to record here. And creating moments, and a lot of moments happened. Like there was this one person who was having a great time in a shark outfit. BlackPink noticed that person and they called him out.
It's like the cutest shark. No. He must be so hot, but he's been in that shark outfit. Let's give our shark
You think they would have called him out if the entire time he was on his phone and not really having fun? And they recorded people dancing too, as well. People enjoying themselves in the moment, and they could create special moments for you if you're actually present. If you have your phone up the whole time, you're just going to be tired, and your only memories will be like actually holding the phone, right? So why do that? But there's a slight change. The change is when you're at a distance where you can't be close to the artists, and the artists are basically too far for you to see. And at that point, I had to like pull my glasses out and be like, I can't see them, right? The phone itself helps you experience the show because you get a telephoto look. You could actually look at the artists that you want to see rather than what the cameras and the big screen is trying to show you. You can actually see the drummers. You could see like the artist that's not featured, what they're doing. You can actually experience that and actually not force your eyes too much because you can use the zoom lens on your camera and be able to see details of the concert and really enjoy yourself and embrace those moments because you're just too far back to see anything. So that in itself helps to immerse you in the show even more. So yes, some people tell you put the phone down, but having a phone and recording with the phone in a concert is an experience in itself, especially when it comes handy like that. So yeah, people say put the phone down. I do too, but sometimes it helps. So that's the updated 2023 phone settings for concerts. Let me know if you guys have other ideas for phones in the comments down below. This video was fun to do, obviously. The concert was incredible and I do like a lot of their music. And for this particular video, I didn't want to monetize it because I wanted to actually feature some of their music so that you guys can enjoy it too, rather than me just playing whatever. I'm a fan, so anyway, as always, like, share, and you can make my day if you subscribe today. This is Magnus, and I'm out. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.